Retail Smarts podcast. I'm your host, Dominique Lamb.
Today, we are incredibly lucky to be speaking to Beth Glancey, who is the General Manager for ANZ for AirRobe. Such an incredible business. Beth, it's so wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Tell me, how did you get into retail? Because I hear you've got a really exciting kind of background retail story, and you're kind of like, you know, if we could refer to you as one of the goddesses of retail,
I would love that.
This is where we're going to go. So tell me about your background in retail.
I would love to. Can I add that officially on my LinkedIn, Dom?
You can, on LinkedIn, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, after this, I will update to Goddess of Retail. So if we go back to uni days, I was a little bit confused, and I actually started in medicine, which was crazy because I was never going to be a doctor. And my dad was a psychologist, so I studied psychology as a quick follow-on, and I did communications as well because I knew that I wanted to have something a bit more grounded in probably the marketing space. And so I carried through that, and then I ended up doing a master's in PR and realized that I loved that side of marketing and branding. And so my first couple of jobs were in retail and brand. Actually, my first job out of uni was Dyson Appliances, which was an amazing brand, really bedded in design and innovation. Everyone used to say to me, you work for a vacuum cleaner company. And I'd be like, oh my God, it's so much more than that. It was a bit accidental to start in brand and retail. But then from there I worked, I did an amazing stint at Toys R Us and launched their first e-commerce offering. And then I went to David Jones, and I also launched David Jones's e-commerce offering back in 2000 and now you're testing me 14. And I started and fell into this e-commerce digital space. And then from there, my first foray I moved into LVMH actually. And I went across as the marketing director for Benefit Cosmetics and was quickly moved into a general manager role, and have been in general management across LVMH for the last couple of years, working across Benefit and the Sephora business.
Wow. I mean, that's huge because it's such a diverse, I guess, graduation from I was going to be a doctor, maybe a psychologist, communications into, even within the retail space, vacuum cleaners to high-end brands. It's really, really fascinating. How have you found moving from kind of those traditional retailers to what, is almost a disruptor, really, when we think about AirRobe?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Definitely whiplash on some elements. I think what I've been incredibly lucky to have as part of my career to date is that I have worked in some of the best businesses and had the best leaders, and it's just been an amazing stomping ground to learn what good looks like, how to build brands that consumers love, how to build long-lasting brands. So I feel really lucky that I've have that experience. But when you work in a market, in an organization like LVMH, ultimately a lot of the construction of the direction happens at the head office level, and within LVMH that's often in kind of Paris, or it could be in the States. And what I was really yearning was to be part of that and to have a seat at that table. I've always been fascinated by the consumer, and I love what motivates the consumer, which is what retail is all about. And when I started to look at wanting to do something different, the intersection of technology, the movement, this incredible movement behind sustainability and circularity was really interesting to me. And it all came together through an introduction to Hannon from one of our investors, actually, Rachel Kelly, who worked at Afterpay for a long time, where she was the matchmaker, and where I met Hannon and really fell in love with the mission that AirRobe was on, to really speed up this journey towards circularity, and the way that she was going about that in this really innovative technology, which is AirRobe.
Wow. I mean, I think I want to touch on a few things that you said, but particularly around, I think for you said that you were really interested in wanting to have a seat at the table, particularly in those kind of head offices where those decisions were made about product, and that you're really fascinated by consumer. How much of what drives a consumer actually drives employees within a business?
I think you could probably answer a lot in really great consumer-led businesses and not a lot in others. And I've definitely worked across the gamut of that. The best case of the business being led by the consumer, I would say, was Sephora. Mm-hmm. We were absolutely obsessed with the customer. Sephora's mission was to create the most loved beauty community. And so through that, it meant that we had to do what the community wanted. Mm-hmm. And we really listened to them. And then with the evolution of social, it just brings that conversation. It's such a blessing and can be a curse depending on how you manage it, but it's such a blessing because there's no space between the conversation that's happening. You're part of it and you can really listen and take that information and let it help you shape your strategy.
And do you think that experience, that kind of, change to the importance of socials and where that sits within retail and how prevalent it is in terms of creating this community, do you think that is really where we talk about a frictionless experience? When we talk about like bricks and mortar store and having that online, the essential component to that is now this element of socials, because brands curate their products for the community and their communities are so accessible. When you look at, like chat platforms and, the people that are diehard Sephora fans, amongst other things. Yeah. Yeah. Is that kind of where that frictionless experience lies, or do you think it's more than that?
I think it's a huge part because the interconnectedness between the physical experience, the digital experience, and then the consumer's experience, it's happening in real time. And if you use, we thought we were working within this really connected space with Instagram, and then TikTok came along and it's just accelerated it all again, because it's not so much about the curation of pretty images. It's TikTok is all about the realness of what's happening in this really genuine, authentic platform, particularly for Gen Z, who are incredibly discerning, so demanding. They were born into the era of a smartphone, which meant that information was available on demand. They're so informed. You cannot pull the wool over their eyes. But there were examples I remember where there would be a viral TikTok video. I can think of one that sticks out in my mind. It was a Peter Thomas Roth eye serum. There was this TikTok viral video, and that went live, and within 48 hours it had sold out internationally. So like the power of that and the ability for a video that was made from an older woman in the States to push down a global impact that had massive impacts on their supply chain, because it went from, they sold 3 years worth of a product in 2 days is insane. And I think it shows that no marketing that a brand could ever put out would achieve that. But an individual unknown woman showing the effects of it on a TikTok video in a really authentic way is more powerful than anything a brand can do.
Yeah, my goodness. And I think for a brand like AirRobe, where does that play a part? Because, you don't have that physical component, but it's absolutely driven by a community demand around sustainability. I mean, you only need to look at the federal election results in Australia to see that, there is a real kind of not just groundswell, but tsunami around all things environment. How does that play a part in kind of AirRobe's choices, how they market, how they see the consumer, all those things?
Yeah. AirRobe is a business built in the absolute foundations of sustainability and circularity. That was, what drove our existence. And AirRobe's North Star is to accelerate the journey towards circularity. And the way we do that is by removing all the friction. And we have the absolute, it's a zeitgeist moment with this incredible swell of consumer demand, where you have a really woke generation in Gen Z. And we've all read that, by 2025, they'll be 50% of the purchasing power. They will determine what shapes retail moving forward, and they are demanding more and more from us globally. But when it comes to retail, they're wanting to shop. We know that they will make decisions based on shopping with brands that reflect their values. And unlike other generations who have cared, they will follow through. That's the fundamental difference between a millennial and a Gen Z, is they're both values driven, but the Gen Z will act with their wallet accordingly. So we feel AirRobe is really well placed to ride that wave because of the space that we're in. And what we do that's quite unique and different to other e-commerce platforms is we work with them, with the brand and the retailer, to help them so that they can invite their customers to enter the circular economy when they're shopping with them, which is really what's unique about us, because typically the consumer thinks about resell or extending the life of their garments after the purchase, whereas we're getting them to think about it at the moment of the purchase. And what that does is we ask the customer to slow down and consider the value of this item. And what we're seeing in the psychology of that is that she or he or they are then purchasing into better quality items. So we're moving them away from fast fashion, moving them into more quality garments that will maintain their value in the secondhand space. And so really helping them be more considered, slowing down in fashion, and then obviously extending the life of those garments and putting them into the circular economy.
And increasing the basket size of the retailers that you partner with.
Yeah, which is what they love. So we drive up there's a couple of really commercial elements that the brands and retailers really benefit from, and probably the most powerful is we see a plus 55% on average basket for the merchants that we partner with, and that's because she's buying into better quality items within that brand.
Pretty incredible. We hear a lot about the statistics of sustainability, and people making 40% of choices now are directly relevant to kind of the relationship between the brand and the environment. What are some of the challenges that you face as AirRobe in partnering with businesses? Because, of course, if your whole ethos is around circular and behaving in a particular way, how do you choose the people that you partner with?
Yeah, we're ultimately trying to create a marketplace that is full of beautiful, well-made garments that consumers can go to almost first. We have this North Star where we want people to look to the primary and to the secondary market equally, whereas today the masses would certainly be looking to primary first and then really only going to secondary. The younger generation definitely uses secondary as a primary destination. But what we solve for with the retailers and the brands, which is what's been so powerful, is that we help them enter the circular economy in a really seamless way. And up until now, the re-commerce space for brands is a black hole. It exists. They don't typically love it because of the way that their products show up, because of the nature of consumers having to take their own images, write their own descriptions. Often those really beautiful garments can be pictured in a way that they're not particularly proud of. And it means that the experience that you then have with that brand is really not in line with the experience that you would have in the primary, or not particularly something that they would be proud of. And so a lot of the brands that we've spoken to have gone on their own journey on how they can better manage the re-commerce market, and they look into it. And what they realize is that if they want to do it themselves, it's a huge undertaking from a technology point of view, from a resource point of view, and also then it's a really closed economy. So you've got your primary shoppers now shopping alongside their secondary, and they're not wild about that business case. And so what we offer them is the ability to enter the circular economy. We do it in a really light touch way where our product of circular wardrobe is a widget that sits on their product page. Customers are then invited to add items to AirRobe as they're shopping with the brand that they love, so that then when they want to relist it, they can do that in one click, and then it pushes onto the AirRobe marketplace. What they then love about the AirRobe marketplace is that it's all their primary imagery, it's all their own descriptions, and so then there's customers who are actually still a brand's customer, regardless of whether they're shopping in the primary or the secondary space, are getting an experience that's much closer to the branded experience that they would be proud of. So we solve for a lot of factors within that sustainability space, kind of coming full circle to your question. Because we offer them a really light touch, really commercial solution, it's proving to be really easy, and almost, we get a lot of, it's a no-brainer, why wouldn't we, which is a really nice place to be.
What element of that, certainly from your experience with bricks and mortar and obviously online and all of the different components, how hard has it been kind of taking what in effect is kind of a tech company into the retail world and making it, truly a kind of retail marketplace experience?
Yeah, it's been a journey, and I would say that, like any new technology company or any new company, the beginning is a slog. There's you're grinding away. No one knows you. You don't have any brand equity. You have our founder, Hannon, who's based in the States, is incredibly tenacious and one of the most resilient people I've ever met. And she just, really grinded away. And at the very beginning, we were told no a lot, but it was about selecting and falling across just those couple of thought leaders, those businesses and leaders particularly in the Australian retail landscape, who were really willing to hold up the flag and say, we believe that we can enter this space and make it commercial, and we're going to do it because we know it's right for the customer. Like Erica from The Iconic, and we had some really early advocacy from Oroton, some really, really amazing Australian brands who stood up and supported us. And then from there, you start to get that traction and that flywheel, and it becomes easier. I think because AirRobe, yes, we are a technology company, but we understand fashion and retail. And I think that's been a really critical element to our success that's served us really well.
It's really interesting. We recently were at the World Retail Congress, and we did a tour of a department store called Rena Centre. And Rena Centre is, a department store that is in effect built or designed based on each location that they're placed in, and they are only around Italy, and they kind of curate everything that they do regardless of the price point of the particular item. So, it's anyone from kind of, Dolce & Gabbana to they're selling food on a certain level, but it is designed and visually so beautiful regardless of what is being sold. It strikes me that is something from a user perspective that must be really important in terms of aesthetic and getting a certain feel and obviously having a really good experience on AirRobe as a platform that almost is married really well to the brands that you're associated with. How do you get that right?
Yeah.
Because I imagine brands are very particular about what's important to them and the look and the feel and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the biggest concerns that comes up from brands, particularly more in the designer high-end space, is in how can my product live alongside Patagonia jacket and a Reebok pair of sneakers? And the answer there is that ultimately, at the end of the day, a marketplace is exactly that, and it's driven by consumers and what they want, and we need to allow that to continue because that's the power of a marketplace. It's driven by supply and demand of the consumer. But what we need to do is create an AirRobe brand that is elevated enough but also inclusive enough, and you do that through branding. And then from a user experience point of view, we have a designer hub within the AirRobe space so that for a consumer who wants to look and shop in that price point, they can do that. And then you give confidence to brands like everyone from Acne to Zimmermann to Scanlan to say you will only sit alongside your peers. But then that can, because the reality is that the consumer who buys the Acne blazer, the Zimmermann dress, and the Victoria Woods pair of jeans also wants to buy the Reebok pair of sneakers, the Birkenstocks, and the Country Road scarf, because everyone, the majority of Australians' wardrobes are mixed through with price points and brands that they're aspiring to wear, but also everyday brands that they love that are threaded into Australia's fabric. So it's about solving to that from the consumer point of view. And one of the things that we're working with the brands on is educating them on, yes, the marketplace it's not a formal distribution point. So whilst they can control who they retail with in their distribution strategy, at the end of the day, secondhand marketplace and pre-loved marketplaces are existing. They are happening. We can't really control them completely from a consumer point of view because at the end of the day, they'll sell and buy what they want to buy. But what we can do is help them through their imagery, through the descriptions, and making them more elevated in that space.
You touched on before the fact that you've been really lucky to have some incredible mentors. What makes a mentor a good mentor?
The number one factor I think that makes for a successful mentor is one that you gel with. And that's so hard because how do you know who you gel with when you reach out to someone? And the reality is you don't, but you have to start. I think I've had mentors who I didn't particularly gel with, and particularly when I was younger, and felt like I had to continue to kind of foster that relationship purely because I didn't want to, they were so grateful to give me their time. But what you realize is that I could have one session with a mentor who I just really understood and who got me. That would be so much more valuable than maybe 3 or 4 sessions with a mentor where it was a bit more tokenistic. So, and it doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with them. It's just they have to understand you and you have to understand them and be able to at least respect and have the same values. And you have to put work into a mentor relationship both ways. It can't just be give and give and give and take and take. It's really about respecting each other and understanding what you can add to each other. And some of the best mentor relationships I've had have ended up being quite two-way, which has been really nice.
It is really interesting. How do you foster kind of a mentor type initiative in a workplace to get the best out of your staff, especially, in a world like AirRobe, which, is not necessarily a place where you're going to see everybody all the time. Yeah. You might not all be in the same locations. Obviously, you've got your founder in the United States. I mean, how do you foster genuine relationships in a virtual world? Yeah.
You have to make the effort. So it's really easy to cancel on a Zoom meeting. It's not so easy to cancel on a coffee meeting or a lunch date. And I think there is an incredible value in meeting people in a physical space. And I've certainly sought out mentors to help me on my own journey, having come from such a structured, traditional retail space with LVMH to now moving into a startup and technology space. I've sought out mentors who I was looking for someone who'd have gone on a similar journey to me. I wanted to have someone who I was looking for a female who'd potentially worked in, more of a traditional
like retail,
or like even industry, and had gone into more of this tech space. And I actually reached out and have developed a great relationship with Kat Constas, who's the GM of Afterpay here, and she came from Amex and went to Afterpay. And a lot of people say, like, how do you get a mentor? I just reached out to Kat. Like cold. Hi, fangirling over here. And she was amazing. And she was like, I would love to. And we meet once a month and we do it in person because we can. And that's where it's really reciprocal because we respect each other's time. We're both really busy, but it's important for us and we make that time. That's been something that's been a really fruitful relationship for me and someone who I feel understands me. I understand her. We've come from similar paths. And it's proving to be a really, really lovely relationship.
I think there's a real misconception that sometimes, when you look at retailers, particularly ones that, develop a brand in something like activism or sustainability or gender or any of those things, that their employees automatically gravitate towards them because of what they stand for. Do you think that your values surrounding sustainability and circular economy have grown as a result of AirRobe, or were they as defined before you got there?
They've absolutely grown. My husband is a really big green thumb and has always been really considered and certainly been the real driver in our household and our lifestyle for that, which has been great. But he drives me mental how much I need to wash everything that goes into recycling. But I do it because he tells me that otherwise it won't get recycled. So I've always had that in my life. But I would, if I'm going to be honest, I was very much buying certainly in the primary space before I started at AirRobe, and that consideration set. What has changed is the education, leaning into this industry and really understanding the impact that fashion is having. The more you are absorbed in any brand or any industry, you learn it and you grow to love it. And so that education process has been really quick for me because of obviously the space we're in and needing to be credible and really understanding it. And so I've spent a lot of time researching to make sure I really understand what the problem is. And so that when I talk to retailers and brands, that I understand the problems that they have. So through that, I've really uncovered the challenges and where we can make a difference. And I have really changed my approach to fashion. So I'll give you an example. It was Fashion Week a couple of weeks ago. The swell within me to want to go out and buy new outfits. I was going for 3 days. Old Beth would have done that. She would have gone and, bought all of the new things to make sure that I was seen as being fashion forward on the 3 days because, who's who was there. And I took a really considered approach to say I wasn't going to do that, and I was going to look to my own wardrobe, my network, and AirRobe to build 3 outfits. And I posted about it on LinkedIn, and I, was like hopeful that I was fashion forward enough to fit in at that event. It was proof to say you don't need to. You've got a wardrobe full, well, certainly I do have a wardrobe full of beautiful clothes that complemented with, I borrowed some stuff from my sister, I bought something from AirRobe, but otherwise I put together outfits. And just that own reflection for myself to say I would have probably bought 5 or 6 things to wear for 45 minutes across 3 days. We're so driven by wanting new things and, new shiny things and keeping up with the Joneses on social, and just stopping and considering and really thinking about what's motivating you when you're buying things has been really refreshing for me. My husband also loves it because now I don't spend as much on clothes, but it feels really good.
It's interesting though, because, even when you look at celebrity at the moment, the vintage is back. I mean, you've only got to look at Kim Kardashian at Met Gala. I mean, she's wearing, a dress worn by Marilyn Monroe. Nothing was made, other than the one that she had to get it changed into after, so she didn't damage the dress. But, it is very different, and there is this kind of movement towards collecting or curating clothes from other eras to keep, and to experience again. I mean, I think that there's a message in that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, I grew up that if you were shopping secondhand, it was because it was purely financially driven, and it was almost, there was a stigma attached to it. It certainly was far from cool. I think that whole op shop vintage sector has been alive and well, but it was always niche and someone who was a bit more eccentric, and it was this prototype of a person, this archetype of a person, whereas now it is totally in vogue. I actually saw an article yesterday that the BBC reported on, because I'm not sure if you've seen, but Love Island, that reality TV show, have come out and said that everyone will be dressed in secondhand clothing, and the headline was secondhand is now cool. And I was I reposted it because I was like, this is the moment we're in. Like it is no longer a stigma. This is about being considered. And if you think about the word sustainability, all it means is to do something that is actually sustainable, or that that we can maintain. And there's a financial element to that in terms of your own financial benefit that you get from, shopping and secking in the pre-loved marketplace, but also from the planet, because this linear model, through my process of going deep on this over the last kind of 6 months, this linear model is just creating, we contribute to 10%, so fashion contributes to 10% of the world's CO2 emissions, and that's enormous. We need to move from this make, wear, discard model to really being more considered about how we can use what's in existence, just keep pushing it back and pushing it back in.
I always ask people 2 questions at the end of our chats, and basically they are, what are you reading, or what are you watching at the moment?
So, reading halfway through, Let My People Go Surfing, which is by the founder of Patagonia. Now, I'm probably going to get his name wrong, but I think it's Yvon Chouinard, maybe, which again is probably a book I wouldn't have read if I hadn't started at AirRobe. But it's about his journey, and talks about the fact that, that sustainability and fashion and business were always seen as not to be in sync, that they were actually at opposition. And he talks about the fact that you can have a really successful business built on sustainability. And it's Patagonia is such the poster children for how to do fashion right and by the planet and by consumers. And so it's been a really, really interesting read, and I would say it's a really, really high recommend. What am I watching? Oh God, can I be honest?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so Big Brother. Oh my God. It's my absolute vice.
Yeah.
It's complete trash. But what actually dragged me in this season was the fact that it's got a couple of the OGs from 10 years ago when I used to watch it when it was, when it was the reality TV show. So Drew and Tully, for those listening that are into Big Brother, oh God, the drama. So yeah, there you go. I've at least given myself some credibility with the book I'm reading, hopefully.
Hilarious. Well, no, it's funny. Most people on this actually answer up with reality TV. Anything from The Bachelor through to, all sorts of things. I personally am a giant Kardashians fan.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, that and RuPaul's Drag Race.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh, my God.
Both. And, yeah, I did see something online about Big Mother coming.
Yep.
But I don't know if it was just, how, like, sometimes they make up memes. So that's like, anyway,
is it true or is it,
Is it true? I was like, and it would be a great concept and I would 100% watch.
Oh my God, totally. I'm obsessed with the Kardashians. This whole weddings debacle has just been, I'm like popcorn. It's a feast. I'm like, what is going on? She's completely lost it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so exciting. Thank you so much for your time today. We've loved hearing about your journey and all of the amazing things that AirRobe are doing. We're obviously going to watch with great interest to see, what comes next and all the amazing things that you guys implement. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Dom. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate your time.